it's thinking of the right, like I give feedback, but is it something that needs to happen right then in the moment in the team meeting in front of everybody else? Or is this really they jot it down? We're meeting tomorrow in our weekly 101. And that's probably the safer, more genuine space I can bring it up. I always couch it with, I'm going to give you a very front door conversation here, very direct, because I care about you enough to give you the real, valid feedback to help you improve.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Human First Leadership. I'm Connor Drake, Senior Coach at Mindmaven, where we help startup leaders and VCs 10x their productivity, save 12 or more hours a week, and then invest that time into relationships. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Michelle Tinsley, CEO of Sciata, which offers more than a decade of experience providing custom software and analytics and specialists to accelerate meaningful change within organizations. Michelle's a technical leader with decades of experience, including 26 years at Intel, and has gone on to found and lead startups, contribute as an angel investor, and serve on multiple boards. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. I'm excited to dive in. And I say let's get started with a relatively straightforward question. The phrase human first leadership can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What does it mean for you as you're leading your company?
I think it really means meet each employee or customer or sales prospect where they're at. Because again, having the same consistent approach and treating everybody the same as a widget just doesn't work. And
Mhm.
so, everybody has good days, bad days, trying to understand where they're coming from and how maybe we can work together.
No, I love that. And if I remember right, you had mentioned that during your time at Intel, you took an assessment. I think you called it the DISC assessment, right?
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that assessment and what stood out, what you learned about yourself through that process?
Sure. It's one of probably multiple kind of personality different tests you could take. The reason why I like this one is based on the philosophies of Carl Jung.
Mhm.
And so it really gets into what's your inherent behaviors and what motivates you. And in the DISC, it stands for four different acronyms. One is domineering, one is influencing, one is steadying, and the other is conscientious. And everybody has a blend of all four of those, but just like an equalizer, everybody's knobs are in different positions. And so it'll have you look at what's your number one highest of those four and what's your lowest and kind of what's your secondary and how do they play together as a leader, understanding what your own style is to then know, oh, I may naturally hit it off with someone because we're very much similar versus this person's on the complete opposite end of the spectrum from me. And so that may be why we're not clicking all the time. And I look at them and say the role of the leaders is then be the flexible one and say, okay, let me more than meet them halfway. Let me go over to their style and kind of help them out, bring them out, and make sure that their voice is heard.
I love that. So it's an outside assessment that it gives you, I guess, an inside perspective. Did you learn anything surprising about yourself by taking that?
I did. So the four acronyms, two of them are people that are very task oriented to begin with, which are the D's and the C's. And then there's the other half, which are very people oriented, meaning they kind of come first from the person and then get to the result. And those are the I's and the S's. And what I learned was I'm actually the highest is I, influencer, which at the time I was in finance at Intel as a manager and controller. And so I had to be very results oriented, but influencing the right business in, decision or outcome was key to our job. So hence I was good at it because of the high I, but I also had a high D. But when we stood back as a leadership team and looked across the 30 finance managers in the assessment, I was one of two that was with the people side being our number one metric.
Mm-hmm.
The other 28 were all task. And so I kind of, and this is why people are coming to me going, you're very different as a manager, because I was, again, people oriented first. And then, yes, I can very much get to the task. But whereas the other 28 in the sample were all coming at it from task, and may not get to the people side of things.
Fascinating. Okay. And how do you feel how do you feel that balance played out, having the majority of the leadership be task and then a minority be relationship focused?
Yeah, I think for me, it was a kind of a happy differentiator, again, because within the role of finance at Intel, you were kind of always asked to rotate every 2, 3 years and take on different roles. So as a manager, when you open an internal requisition of, I got an opening on my team, I would find that I had a lot of people wanting to come and work on my team because they heard good things, or they want to come back and work for me again. And so I look at that and go, because again, I can do both the people and the task. My secondary close second was the D, which is the domineering, but go get results kind of piece of it. So yes, I influence, but I also go get results. So, people looked at that when, she'll be challenging. She's going to set aggressive goals with her team, but you're going to accomplish a lot. You're going to learn a lot, and you're going to stand back after those 2, 3 years on her team and go, wow, I didn't know I could do that, but look at what we did. And that was kind of fun and amazing. And again, hence, I've got a lot of them still on LinkedIn that we're connected. And they, anytime there's an opening now in Sciata, they're like, hey, you should look at this. It's a great opportunity.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. But do you feel like learning that about yourself, did that encourage you to lean more into your strengths, focus more on bolstering your weaknesses, or maybe a combination of both?
I've always been a lean on your strengths kind of person because, again, nobody's ever going to be perfect. And what that inherently means is I'm low on the S, which is honoring history and traditions and
Mhm.
keeping things the same and don't rock the boat. And it's like, well, okay, my whole career's been in tech. So
Yeah.
luckily I found an industry that's okay with being disruptive and changing stuff. Because
Hmm.
if I had been in a role, say, at like a government agency where you want to keep things consistent over 20 years, I think I would be miserable. So I look at it and go, yes, it's lean in and leverage those strengths, but also then know that because I'm never going to be on the C side, the most detail oriented, conscientious, 50 pages deep on backup, making sure all the numbers tie. I need those people that are inherently, that's their number one strength. I need those people on my team. Because again, the whole team, we need to have that well rounded output, but know that I can flog myself 6 ways from Sunday and never be the strongest C on the team. It's just not in my DNA. And so
Mm.
admitting that, giving yourself grace and going, good news is as a leader, I get to have a team. It can be a diverse team and I can bring people with those inherent skill sets onto my team.
Excellent. Yeah, there's, I think, so much value in knowing yourself first and knowing your team is important and what motivates, what drives them. And we'll probably have a chance to talk about that as well. But until you know yourself, it's hard to know who you need to hire for.
Well, and I think it's also getting okay with the label of like, oh my God, I'm an influence person.
Mm.
I'm supposed to be in finance. I'm not in HR. I'm not, it sounds kind of fluffy. Or when I did Strengths Finder, my number one strength was woo, win others over. And I was like, what the heck is a woo? And I'm in finance at the time, that just sounds weird. But going, okay, embrace it. It's who I am, and that's okay. And again, there's no one way to be a leader. There's multiple ways to kind of skin that
Hmm.
opportunity. And so going, okay, being okay with it and knowing who you are and not letting that chip away at your confidence or again, make you feel like you have to be somebody else to be successful. Cause again, I think if you're trying to role play and be somebody else, you're not going to be inherently good at what you're doing.
Yes, I love that. Let's talk about then the journey from Intel to now leading Sciata. What are some of the lessons that you took from your time at Intel that you're now
Well,
seeing you
yeah,
building?
I wrote a blog years ago. And I want to say 2 years ago about that was like the beauty of working at Sciata is we're private equity backed. And what it's tapping into is the 26 years at Intel being corporate, where you have to think big. You have to look at industry level strategy. You have to see where are growth rates, where's their value? How do we go set strategies at a company level to go hit that value? But then you turn around and you utilize all the startup skills that I built over 7 years, which is the get stuff done. It's great to have a strategy, but this is in corporate America where I got 5 people to do the PowerPoint for me. It's no, we got to go make it happen. If not me personally, my team. Again, we don't have 5 layers on the org chart. It's like two. And so, it's like, okay, we got to run and chew gum at the same time. And we always say, it's building the strategy, building out our operational capacity as we're flying the plane. But in the world of private equity, then saying we're meeting in the middle, we're not just, we can't be rough shod and not ready for prime time or, delivering to our clients are tier one household name types of clients. We can't be giving them something that's half baked. And when you're a startup, that might be okay because people go, well, they're only a year old company. What'd you expect? Okay, we're over a decade old company. So we do need to be more buttoned up. We do need to be Wall Street ready. So I go, it's kind of the walking that fine line between we do have higher expectations, but we do still act nimble like a startup.
Hmm. It's interesting. I'm seeing that the idea of walking that fine line and finding that balance between two potentially seemingly opposite things and making them work together is kind of a theme, it sounds like, over your journey. And I want to talk about another one of those walking the line elements, specifically around your team. As someone who's more relationship focused, usually when you think of leading people from a relationship focused perspective, it's very coaching and empowering. For someone who's maybe a little bit more task driven on the leadership front, they tend to be more directive, right? So would it be a fair assumption to say that you tend to naturally lean a little bit more toward the coaching side?
I do. And again, one of my development areas is to know, okay, there are certain situations when you just got to, like in the case of a burning building, yell, get out. So you do need to be directive. It's not like, hey, I'm thinking like maybe you should make your way towards the stairwell, so looking at things situationally and going, where is the business situation where I do just need to be directive and
Mhm.
kind of set the expectations. And we got to, as a team, salute and run forward. And which of these are opportunities for growth where I go, you know what, I'm going to let them take the ball and I'm going to take a back seat and I'm going to coach them through it. And they may not do it exactly the way I would do it, but you know what? They got to a decent result and we learned from it. And they now have done something they've never done before. And the more they do that, the better they're going to get. And that's very empowering to me because I go, now I don't have to do that. I don't have
Mhm.
to be the only one. Even at a smaller firm, we need to be sure that there's always backup, solutions from a capability standpoint. And that's not, it's something that we should be threatened by. It's something that, again, should be seen as empowering because now that frees us up to go do bigger things, new things.
Certainly. And what advice would you have for yourself, say, at the start of founding this company? How do you find that balance between when to be a coach and when to be the director?
Well, startups, especially, a sense of urgency is so critical. And the founders really kind of set that tone. They define the culture for how's a startup going to operate. And the way I ran my startups was culture was living and breathing every day. It was not something that was a poster on the wall that we set once in our foundational year or two and then kind of forget about it, or maybe look
Mhm.
at it once a year and go, yep, that looks good. It was a using the values to both give out recognition, to write reviews, to give spontaneous, compensation, but tie it back to the values and go, this is something where it should be alive and well. So back to that, coaching example, the startups have to move fast, and again, it's one of these like, okay, let's talk about what guardrails we want to put on this opportunity, what would cause us to kind of halt or stop or pause. But in deference of that, then just keep running, and know that it may not be perfect. And even in my company this week, I gave our VP of operations the coaching of, hey, we need to get quarterly business reviews going, scheduled, set, just put them on the calendar. And if you pick a wrong time for the client, then it gets into a what's the best time tomorrow or the following week. But we get them on the calendar versus right now sending emails and asking for time slots. It's going too slow. And so, again, they won't be perfect. That's okay. I'm not setting perfection as the standard for a very first meeting like this. We don't need a giant PowerPoint deck. It's really a dialogue, having maybe 5 topics teed up for discussion and really having the dialogue with the customer. Because I always think, again, not having slides, having the bigger screen, seeing the faces, the body reactions, that's where we're going to be investing in our customers and hearing their feedback versus feeling like we got 20 pages of PowerPoint we put together. We got to get through them in 30 minutes. That's not to me an effective meeting.
I love that. I remember talking with a client of mine a year or two back on reversible decisions and how a lot of people put so much weight on decisions when the vast majority of them are reversible. And the date for that meeting is a perfect example. If you set it for Monday and it doesn't work, reverse the decision. You can walk it back. And most decisions are that way if you really break it down. Just making the decision and taking action toward it and adjusting is going to get you where you want to go so much faster than trying to find the perfect decision in the moment, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And then once you have the QBR, say, okay, well, let's set the next one while we're on the call. It's again like typical sales behavior to say, don't let the person off the call without setting the next step. Because now trying to do it loosely via email, it could get lost in their inbox, hearing the urgent, and now weeks and months are going by.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think would it be fair to say that it's easier to have that directiveness, that, tell you what to do ness when your team also knows that you care about them, when they've seen that coach side as well, right?
Yes. And that's where I go, it's thinking of the right, like I give feedback, but is it something that needs to happen right then in the moment in the team meeting in front of everybody else? Or is this really they jot it down, We're meeting tomorrow in our weekly 101. And that's probably the safer, more genuine space I can bring it up. I always couch it with, I'm going to give you a very front door conversation here, very direct, because I care about you enough to give you the real, valid feedback to help you improve. I think a sloppier manager, a lazy manager, is one that would just be like, "Oh, let it go," and then you see the same behavior again a few weeks later, and again. And so now, like when it's 3, 4, 5 times in, it's becoming a pattern. And what is going to now make you flip the switch to say, "Now I'm going to bring it up"? Now that you've done it 5 times, oh yeah, it really irritated me. Not only the first time, but that's especially the 5th time. And it's like, okay, well, as a manager, didn't you care enough to kind of bring it up and again, do it in the right form, in the right way. Do it with I'm doing this because I want to invest in you. I always say feedback is a gift and it came without a return receipt. So he's bucket to go give it back and fight and deny it. And I always say, like, if you start piling on, you can tell as a manager that, oh, this is hitting an emotional chord. Okay, I better give him some time. And, knowing your employees over time, going, some of these, they may want to send a head email. Hey, this week in our 101, I want to turn it into more of a development session and give you some direct and honest feedback. And it's going to be around these points. So for people who need to pre-process that, there may be an ability for them to kind of go, okay, I know going into this meeting, I should be ready for it. And again, take this as an opportunity of, okay, good. She wants to invest in me. She wants to see me do better versus let it get to a standpoint where it's like passing over a performance improvement plan, or worse yet, you're out of here. And the person's like, well, I never got notice or opportunity to work on this. I'm like completely blindsided. Who does that?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people who maybe naturally gravitate toward the more relational side of leadership are worried about hurting someone's feelings or breaking someone down, making them feel less than or incapable. But shifting that perspective the way you have, where by choosing not to give them that feedback, you're doing them a disservice. If they know that you believe in them and they've told you what's important to them, what, they want their life, their career to look like, feedback is how you help them get there, right?
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
And you don't need to pile on. You don't need to make it into a personal insult. It's just like, I'm observing this. What
Mm-hmm.
are you seeing that too? Is that, the way you want to be, viewed as a leader? Yeah, I think sadly, sometimes leaders think, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, but I go, no, being a leader is bringing up the uncomfortable dialogue and getting the employee to a place where they can embrace it and go, you know what, you're right. I want to, because awareness is the first step to learning. I got to be aware that this is something I need to work on. Then I can actually try different approaches and then we can see which one works for me. And then, also pile on and give them positive support when you see them trying the new things. Because again, it's going to probably take them 14 times of trying the new thing to feel like they're getting good at it. So don't just kind of be silent for 13 and then on the 14th go, yay, you won. It's like on 2, 3, 5, I go, I see you trying and I love it. I love that you're trying it. Keep going. Keep trying it again. Yeah.
I love that. Let's talk culture a little bit, because this relates to culture, I think, very strongly. And you've said that culture should be something that lives and breathes in an organization. And that's largely your responsibility as a leader, but it's also the responsibility of the team. Team contributes to the culture with every action they take or choose not to take. So let's say you're bringing a new team member on. How do you introduce the culture to them and turn them into an active contributor toward it?
So we start with the interviewing process because I look at it and go, the last thing I want to do is get all the way to the end of a hiring process, bring somebody in, especially because for me, my hire's a leadership level person. We just welcomed a VP of sales to our team. I wanted him to know early and often in the hiring process that I'm a transparent manager. You will know exactly where you stand with me. And by the way, I'm open to input from you as well. I don't assume that I know everything. I'm bringing you in to be VP of sales because you're 6 Sigma A+ scorecard person on sales. I'm a B-. I can do sales and I have to do sales because the CEO should always be promoting the company, but I want you to be better than me. I want you to be coming back when Michelle and that call, you might have needed to tone it down a bit and let the customer talk more. Maybe do a little bit better job of listening and be, amen, okay. So part of it's during the interviewing process, sharing, here's where our company's headed, here's our vision, here's how we're getting there. Here's going to be your role in helping us deploy that. As VP of sales, he owns our growth swim lane, meaning he's going to be driving quarterly deliverables to hit an annual milestone towards our 4-year vision of how we're growing this company. And top line, that's at least 20% revenue growth year over year, not just for who we are today, but as we go to do M&A and integrate in new parts of the company, growing that new piece as well. So that 20% is going to get harder and harder as the base becomes a bigger and bigger number. So letting them know what that is, and also bringing them in. And again, part of having HR meet with them as a new employee onboarding, refreshing it again and saying, do you know your role in the vision? By the way, every week we have a leadership team meeting. We're talking about how we're achieving those deliverables and what is our weekly accomplishments towards those. Are there any that we're hitting challenges, headwinds we need to team tackle or dialogue? What do we need to do differently to bust through it? And then monthly, we do a checkpoint on how we're doing on our strategy. And this last one, honestly, we had to recommit to our vision because we're getting a little stodgy and flabby. And I warned them, hey, you're brand new to the team, so I know you're not part of the problem because you just joined a week or two ago. But I'm going to be very direct with the team and say, hey, folks, we got to recommit to this. It's not just me, it's all of us. And you should hear me oozing the vision and how we're working. I want you then emanating that too. And so I basically launched a new recognition, which is at this next meeting will be the first time I give out we have a beaded unicorn, and it's going to travel because not all of our people sit in Arizona. And whoever gets that award is going to get the unicorn in the mail. And then they're going to keep their eyes open for the following month and say, who else on the team earned the unicorn this team? And they earn the unicorn by living and breathing daily our vision values and advancing us on our strategies.
Oh, I love that. That creates such what's the word for it? It's a very dynamic environment where people are invested. They're watching and celebrating their team. That's incredible. That's
I go, you can't phone at home and call into this meeting with your camera off and mute. Really, you're doing something else and halfway listening. That I'll call people on on here.
Yeah.
And if you're in a situation like a doctor's visit where you shouldn't be on the call, then don't be in the call at all. There's none of this like halfway, or again, like you're not feeling well today, take a half day off or a day off, but it's like, if you're here, then I'm going to count on you being present and participating.
Absolutely. Let's talk just a little bit more on that hiring process. You're looking for someone who's a good culture fit just as much as someone who's a good skill fit, right? What are some of the biggest green flags that you or the team look for when you're hiring someone?
I think when they double click on the vision, mission, or values and say, well, what do you mean by this? Or did you realize from my background, I did something similar at my prior company? So they're starting to relate some of their history and showing how they can start bringing, I go, it's like as if you're making a soup, everybody brings ingredients to the soup, so it's like, what are they bringing from their experiences and background that are going to make us better as a company? Because we're going to tap into that knowledge base and talent. Or just wanting to understand more of the details of how this works and how it's manifest. How long have we been doing this? How long has the strategy been in place? What have we accomplished so far? We measure ourselves every quarter, and I say a score of like 75 to 80% completion on our strategic deliverables is probably about right. That means we're setting aggressive goals. We should not be 90, 95, 100%. This isn't like being in school where you get an A+. We should be setting aggressive goals where sadly 20, 25% of the time we're dribbling into the next quarter with completing that because we had a lot on our plate. Conversely, if we're hitting 50%, that's like, what the heck? The team is half checked out. Like there's something really wrong. Either we put too much on the plate. We need to be realistic. And with this next quarter's exercise, let's really focus on setting again a quantity of deliverables that we know we can hit 75, 80%.
I like that. Okay. We've talked a little bit about hiring and a little bit about building that culture for people in the first couple of weeks. I want to jump ahead a little bit in the timeline now because I was reading an article about an Iron Chef style party that you hosted. I think it was over the holidays last year for, correct me if I'm wrong, but the entirety of your team, right?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that and what inspired that?
Yeah, well, it started with a budgetary need of like, hey, as we started price checking holiday parties at restaurants and places, it was going to be prohibitively expensive. And we were like, this is crazy. So I said, well, if we're willing to take a risk, we can try what I've done before. I've done this with multiple teams at Intel, is we take the team and split it into two, or if you've got a very large team, you can make it three. But you're dividing under the teams people that are great chefs and people that have never cooked before. So we do a little bit of a survey to say, tell us your level. And by blending the teams, people are kind of cross-pollinating across departments and working with each other. They then a week in advance need to give me what they're going to cook. I give them the assignment, like the Iron Chef
Mm.
is. Okay, for the appetizer, it had to have, I think it was like fig in it. For the main course, it had to have rice because I've sometimes done like garlic or onion or something, but and then the dessert had to have strawberry. And so basically, they then could go search the internet, come up with whatever they want to make, but knowing they're only going to get an hour and a half to cook. In this case, because our team was smaller, I did the appetizer, which was out
Mhm.
while they were cooking, and they could kind of nibble on a cheese board and garlic shrimp while they were making the main course and the dessert. And then basically we judged them on appearance, taste, and overall kind of just how did they match the ingredient? Like how creative did they get with using the key ingredient? Was it like just placed on the plate, or was it part and parcel to this being an amazing, dish? It was very close, but the team that won was super excited. We knighted them with a Nerf sword and then gave them gift cards, So the fun was, was at my house. All we had to buy was like the unique ingredients that they needed for that night. All the staples like salt, pepper, flour, I already had. We
Mhm.
just knew them. And then the budget was spent on the gift cards and the kind of the drinks that we had throughout the night. But it allowed a lot of creativity and mixing. And again, you weren't just sitting next to a person on the left and right or across the table. People were mixing and mingling. And then we ate the food as our dinner and dessert for the evening. So it was very budget friendly. But again, everybody said that was so much fun. And even for the non-chefs, they were like, I was a little stressed out coming into this, but seeing that there were people on the team that could coach me or give me, like something to go chop or something to go do, I was still part of the team and learned a lot. So we just had a great time, and now people are saying we may need it to be an annual thing now. So yeah, I was like, okay, getting ready for this year. We definitely could still do it again. And we're not too prohibitively big that we could actually do it.
Mhm. And I can imagine that an environment like that is also going to get people who maybe wouldn't typically work together closely to have to collaborate, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Oh,
we
that's
had.
great.
I think the one team that lost, they're like, "Come on, it's not fair." They put the intern in charge of dessert, and the center of the brownies caved in because they weren't cooked enough or something. So they're
Mhm.
like, "Note to self: we're going to supervise the intern closer."
You're right. Lessons learned for next year.
Yep.
Oh, that's wonderful. How often do you do all hands events like this? Maybe not as elaborate as the
Yeah.
Iron Chef, but is it a once a year
We
type of thing?
alternate. One quarter we'll do a community service where again we're all like we just did this last quarter where we did feed my starving children. So we packed up little bags of dehydrated food, and then they get 36 of those packs in a box, and then they ship them off around the world to either refugees, um, kind of non-government organizations that are kind of there to help feed people and sustain their nutrition. Then the prior quarter, we did again more of a team builder. We went to Bam Kazam, which is kind of like a hybrid of like obstacle course slash escape room. And then in the Q1 timeframe, we did again another community service where we made dinner at a Ronald McDonald House. So we're like, we keep getting into this cooking theme, but we're like, everybody eats. So we're like, it's not something
Oh.
that's going to exclude people based on athletic abilities or, get super detailed into a hobby where people like, I can't rock that.
Mhm.
So yeah, we try to alternate it with kind of a team builder versus a community service.
And I feel like you mentioned earlier on in this call that your team is at least somewhat distributed, right?
Yeah, we have two executives in the Atlanta area now.
Mhm.
And then the rest of the headquarters, kind of back office team is in Phoenix. But we do have field workers that are all over the United States. So unfortunately with them, we sometimes have to do virtual things because the cost of trying to fly 50, 60 people to one location, it just hasn't been something that's in the cards right now.
Certainly. Would you be willing to share an example or two of something that you've done virtually to build that culture?
Absolutely. So we're doing twice to three times a quarter knowledge sharing session with our technical workers where they get the opportunity to present out something they've worked on that they
Mm.
think has applicability or sharing. So lately it's been a lot of like, here's how I'm using generative AI validation tools for writing my software code. And again, spotlighting one of our workers to teach the others on how to do that. We've similarly had from our team, our operations leader present out. Here's kind of like a lot of our folks are independent consultants. So here's things to think about as you set up a consulting business, the pros, cons, and things like that. But also knowing how do you effectively run a consulting business, so are you setting goals for yourself? Are there,
Mm.
targets you're trying to achieve? The topic varies, but those types of things. And then in the past, at one of my startups, we also did just virtual happy hours where everybody grabs their own beverage, and then we have every 10 minutes a different topic on a Zoom room. So with that, you actually have to use,
Hmm.
because it was very easy to break people into choose, one would be hobby centric, which it was either travel, golf, hiking, or other. And, so you end up in a Zoom room with people picking those hobbies, but then the next one, it may be, what is your industry that you'd like to work in? Is it manufacturing, healthcare, whatever, So these Zoom rooms are getting mixed up every 10 minutes.
Mm.
And the beauty of you're with a different group of people that work great with very large groups. So like we have 50 to 100 people on a call.
Oh, that's perfect. That scales wonderfully too.
Mhm.
Versus the Iron Chef is going to be difficult at some point to scale,
Yeah.
at least in its most
I did do it
traditional
once with like
format.
40 plus people, and I felt like I had PTSD after that.
I can
And
imagine.
there's definitely a challenge with getting enough like mixing cups and knives and things because you don't expect to have five people using knives all at the same time. Yeah.
Certainly. That's just such a great story, though. And I really like how just practical and applicable that is. Maybe not everyone's going to take the Iron Chef idea and run with it, but the core
Yeah.
principles in there, bringing people together, finding something that unites everyone, even if they're not a great chef, they know how to use a knife. They can cut something up. That's really powerful. And we could frankly dig into these topics and keep going for hours. And I would selfishly love to. Maybe we wrap up with one final question here. You'd mentioned early on in this call that you've had employees tell you that they'd follow you anywhere. And in fact, some of them have. And I think for many leaders, that's the dream. If you have people who are willing to follow you through hell and back from one company to another, that our recruiting takes care of itself. So for any leaders who are listening and aspiring to be that type of leader, is there a piece of advice you would have for them, something that they can do to build that type of trust and loyalty with their team?
I think the hardest part about just being a new leader, new manager is it's in the Ram Charan leadership pipeline book, but you have to change what you value and how you define a good day. When you're an individual contributor, good day is like, I produced so much, but when you're a manager, it's my team, look what they did. And I'm now like, I get excited being the cheerleader because they did something new or they accomplished a goal or they hit a height that they haven't hit before. And so it's really shifting your values, where you spend your time, how you set your day-to-day priorities absolutely has to be different as a manager and a leader. And that natural kind of commitment level will follow. It has to be authentic that way. It just can't be, something like you're like, oh yeah, I'll check the box. I'll carve out time and I'll give you my time, But it's like, I
Right.
think an employee will feel like if you're doing it robotically versus really being excited about joining the call with them and hearing how their day is going and where you can actually help them.
Hmm. Well, I genuinely can't think of a better point that we can wrap up on than just choose to show people that you care. First off, care, which I think is not a problem for most people, but then take the time to show that you care. Show up for
Yeah.
people, ask them questions, learn what's important to them, what's going on in their life. And it has such a massive impact on people being seen as people first and employees second,
Yes.
right? Well, Michelle,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for your time. It was a fantastic conversation. So many great things to take away from it. For our listeners, there's frankly so much to take from it that I say pick one thing and run with it. You've got probably a year's worth of things you can try out in here, but pick one thing, run with it. And I can't wait to hear about the impact it has on you and your team.
Sounds good.
Thank you again, Michelle.
Thank you.